You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access.
You are watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Serious about business.
Serious about business.
Mandatory pensions, averting the retirement crisis of tomorrow. That's the theme for the 9th annual pension seminar being held by Prime Asset Management Limited in association with the PSOJ. I'm Candy. Stay tuned to Business Access TV for the highlights.
There's no question about the importance of pensions. Problem is that pension has never been taken seriously in Jamaica. Certainly from the leadership perspective, we regard it as very, very important. But there's always a fight to get the workers, especially the younger workers in the workforce, to get into pension. Because they will want to tell you that you know, what they save, what they get at the end of their work life is not good enough. And I think this is something that we have to look on going forward. The other thing is that the fights that we have had in the country over the years with pension schemes, and I refer to, for example, the Air Jamaica situation. You remember that battle we had to go to the Privy Council and what have you. Right now, there's a scheme at the bauxite company, Windalco, formerly Alcan, very massive scheme. And what we find is that the surplus, the new company, the Russians, they are hanging on half of the surplus. And what we have discovered is that a lot of the workers, number of them who have served longer than 40 years in the industry. Some of them are dying, waiting on the courts to settle that issue. And I do hope that the recent development at Dennis and Geddes, that we don't have that protraction in terms of settling that issue. I really believe, though, that when you put in place a pension scheme at the workplace, that scheme is designed to provide social and economic comfort for the members at the end of their working life. And I really believe that whatever the outcome of that scheme, I believe all the proceeds should go to the members of the scheme. You notice I'm not saying the workers. I'm saying the members of the scheme.
We can have the best designed pension fund structure, the best structure. But if our economic management of the economy is not consistent over a long period of time, it doesn't matter when you started putting your pension away. If you started putting your pension away 40 years ago in Jamaican dollars, and the dollar was worth 1 to 1, and today the dollar is worth 127 to 1, and the returns in the pension are reflective of interest rates, and yes, there are tax benefits, there is nothing that can destroy the pension more than poor fiscal management. The only way we are going to deal with the matters of addressing the wealth of this country and addressing a base to be able to fund the future obligations is by building economic wealth in Jamaica. We absolutely have to face the music, and we have to grow the economy. And that is not an easy thing to do, because we failed to do that over the last 40 years. Our growth has been anemic, 0.8%, average growth over 40 years. But the reality, as we see and we look today, we have a debt to GDP of 120%, It's way too high. It's an improvement on 150%, and many little things have happened to help that. Petrocarib, good fiscal management. But even if we grow by 5% tomorrow morning for the next 4 years, compounded, and the debt stock remains the same, we're going to have a problem because we're still going to have a debt to GDP over 100%. That's not going to fix the problem that we're facing in this room. We have to look at methods to grow the economy in a sustainable way that's all-inclusive. It can't just be the top end of society that benefits from growth. The wind of growth, the feeling of growth needs to be felt by everybody, including all the members of the pension funds. And there's a lot that can be done to achieve that growth. And a lot of the people in this room are going to be important to developing that. Because one of the major problems that we have in this country is that we simply have a very poor managed financial system. And when I talk about system, I'm talking about capital markets, etc., banking system. When you think about it, the engine of growth has to come from the development of new businesses, employment, and getting people receiving money in their pocket. Receiving money in their pocket so actually they can contribute to a pension fund. In order for that to happen, we have to ensure that access to capital is available to the people who have bright ideas. It needs to be a capital market that works around a meritocracy. The capital market almost, the inefficiencies of it, is almost a barrier to entry and protection to those at the very top of society. Because the lack of competition that exists because future competitors cannot come in because they can't get access to capital is a major impediment.
CEO of the PSOJ, Dennis Chung, joins me now. Mr. Chung, tell us, what would you say are some of the benefits of mandatory pensions?
Well, the main benefit is that it forces people to save. A lot of people don't have that discipline. So if you have a mandatory pension scheme, then people will be forced to save for their retirement. What happens now is that a lot of people get into a position where they're nearing retirement and they find that they don't have any money. You know, so how they're going to live after. Mandatory pension will ensure you save, and with the whole thing of portability, it means that even if you leave one employment, it will carry over to the next. So at the end of the day, we'll have a aged population that actually has money to support themselves.
Would you say there are any disadvantages to the scheme?
Not really. I mean, people say that, you know, they don't have flexibility with their money, but what they want with the money, they want to take time to spend it. You know, maybe the only thing I look at is, you know, if you're going to have mandatory pension, you need to have a strong legislative environment to hold people like trustees and so accountable so that people don't actually lose their money when it's invested.
And what would the PSOJ say about the current state of retirement in Jamaica? Are you satisfied with it? Totally inadequate. 10% of the working population of 1.3 million people actually do have a pension or some other retirement scheme. That means that when you look at the future, 20 years down the line, we're going to have a serious problem. And even so, a lot of what is in pensions now are still inadequate. It's still going to replace only about 20% of your income. So what happens in 20 years' time when all these people retire? Where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from the people who are currently working. They're going to have to support it, which means higher taxes, a greater strain on the fiscal accounts.
It really is a privilege to join you for this 9th annual Prime Asset Management Private Sector Organization of Jamaica Pensions Seminar and to deliver greetings. And it is heartening to see each of you making the decision to attend this seminar that is aimed at examining issues affecting the pensions industry. And I'll share with you a public secret, because this is, in fact, my first Prime Asset Management PSOJ pension seminar as President and CEO of Victoria Mutual. But I've always been very impressed by the thought leadership that this event has contributed to the industry over the years. And I think we should congratulate Rez and the PSOJ for a job well done. So well done, Rez and team. Ladies and gentlemen, we meet at a time when, as the IMF themselves have said, our program implementation under the IMF's extended fund facility is on track. And if you read the 13th review that was published on the 16th of September, they point out that the domestic confidence indicators are at an all-time high, that there are improving signs of economic activity, increased FDI inflow, stronger private sector credit growth. In fact, real GDP growth, I think, is estimated last financial year at 1% and is projected to reach 1.7% in 2016-2017. Keep going. Yeah, right. I keep going. So that's a good thing. So it's double the 0.8% that PB spoke a while ago, but it's much too low. But with Victoria Mutual, we're pleased with this progress, and we acknowledge that we're not quite out of the woods. But in light of this, I want to share publicly that we are fully committed to playing our role at Victoria Mutual in the drive to accelerate economic growth. We fully support the Economic Growth Council's call to action, and we stand ready to partner with other stakeholders, business persons, savers, everyone, in executing the key growth initiatives, such as improving access to finance. Now, Minister, I listened very carefully to your budget presentation, and I want to also publicly commend you for that passionate stance you have taken on financial inclusion. And I think we really want to congratulate not only Minister Shaw, but the government, the central bank, for the emphasis that they have been placing on financial inclusion. Because yes, we all want higher levels of economic growth, but it needs to be inclusive growth. As stated by the World Economic Forum, economic growth is more sustainable when it is equitable and inclusive. And you heard PB speak to that just a while ago. So financial inclusion is really what Victoria Mutual has always been about. Financial inclusion affords a world in which everyone has access to financial services. It is widely known that Victoria Mutual was established with the goal of assisting all Jamaicans to achieve their dreams of home ownership. Now, almost 138 years later, we are focused on the mission of improving the lives of individuals and families through the building of their financial independence.
I went to a seminar in London a few weeks ago. A guy from Malaysia said they have a policy. It's called BRF, Big Results Fast. Well, Jamaica is desperately in need of BRF. You see, we have had too many episodes of ups and downs. Some of you in this room were not around in the 1960s when the Jamaican economy was growing at 6% per year. And in 1970, the economy grew in one single year by 12%. Now, for you to understand the significance of that, one government was in power for 18 years in relatively recent times. One Minister of Finance was in office for 14 years. And the aggregate growth for that 14-year period was 12%. Over 14 years. Not surprisingly then, we are told by the World Bank and others. We had a seminar here recently, sponsored by the World Bank, on growth. And we were reminded that for the past 40 years, Jamaica's economy has grown by an annual average of 0.8%. Not even 1% per year for the past 40 years. We can't sweep these things under the carpet. We have to, we have to recognize where we are if we are to chart a purposeful way forward. Our levels of, our productivity levels in Jamaica has been in persistent decline over the same period. Productivity, output per person in Jamaica is in persistent decline. So yes, we need big results fast, we need a turnaround, and the government has to lead the way, and the private sector has the major role to play, because in our model, the private sector truly has to be the engine of growth, and we can't give it lip service. And so, in that context, there are many reforms that are necessary. There's taxation reform, there's public sector reform, and there's pension reform among them.
Talk to us about the theme that was selected this year about mandatory pensions.
Sure. The issue for us is that when you look at the pension statistics, it shows that too little Jamaicans contribute to a pension plan, and we've been trying over the years to encourage persons to contribute to a pension plan. And one option is mandatory pension. So we're not being prescriptive about mandatory pension, but we want to have the conversation. Should we introduce mandatory pensions to Jamaica? Because there are many ways to close the gap. One is education, one is mandatory pensions. There are a plethora of ways. So this year we thought about having a conversation about mandatory pensions. We invited Fiona Stewart from the World Bank, who she has looked at a number of mandatory schemes globally. And so she's going to bring her perspective regarding what can be done to close the coverage and if mandatory pension is indeed suitable for Jamaica.
Okay, and you mentioned pension education. Do you think that will help to alter the behavior towards pensions?
Well, that's a very important question. So last year's seminar, we had a speaker from the US who said that education plays a role, but it doesn't fully close the gap. But nonetheless, we do believe that based on the low level of coverage, that with education we'll get some uptake in the participation. So public education, financial literacy, financial inclusion can't be left off the table. All of them must work together to build the coverage.
Let's talk about NIS. A quick look at just what NIS is. So the scheme was started in 1966. The minister mentioned that. NIS provides old age pensions. This one is easy. When you get to 65, now it's 65 for both men and women until early this year. It was 60, climbing a little bit each month for women and 65 for men. Now it's 65, 65. When you get to 65, you get a pension. Along the way to that pension, if you get sick at work, you actually get a pension. You can get a pension from NIS. If you die, your spouse, it's widower, can get a pension. And if they're orphans, orphans get pensions out of NIS. Actually, the orphans benefit is the biggest benefit paid out of the scheme. And many years ago, the system had brought in the old sugar workers who had a pension fund that had gone bankrupt, and they were brought into NIS. If you do not contribute enough to the system, then you actually do get a grant. So you actually always get something out. How do you get a pension? We have 3 layers. We call them half, 3/4, and full. You are required, you're expected to contribute from your 18 until you're 65. At the end of this period, we take an average of the number of weeks in which you contributed. If that average exceeds, or it's 39 or more, you get a full pension. If it's 26 but under 39, you get a 3/4 pension. And if it's 14 but less than 26, you get a half pension. If it's under 13, you get a grant. But everybody gets a funeral grant. NIS is a pension plan, but it's not a pension plan. In your pension plan, the ones that everybody sitting in here participates in, what you get out of it is what you put into it. Yeah? What you get out is what you put in, or what your employer puts in for you. NIS is different. NIS includes what I call an element of socialism. If you don't like the word, sorry, but it is true. Because everybody in NIS gets the same flat rate pension. It has nothing to do with how much you paid. It is just a matter of whether you contributed enough weeks. So the domestic helper who contributes at $100 per week gets the same $2,800 per week as the person who contributes at the highest level, which is based on, at this moment, 4% of $1.5 million.
Constance, in your opinion, what needs to be done by the NIS in order to provide adequate pension coverage?
Adequate is a big word. So adequate could mean, is the fund going to be sustainable? Are the benefits going to be enough? How many people are going to get covered from the scheme? In my opinion, number one, we need wide coverage. By law, NIS is supposed to be mandatory. Right now, there's only about 25% of the labor force that's contributing, and the first big thing that's necessary is to get that 25% up. I'd say as a goal, shoot for 50%. Get that 50% on a time slot. 5 years maybe to get to 50%. That shouldn't be so hard because we know who the employers are, or we should know because we have an admin system. So target the employers that have the people that are maybe taking the contributions and not paying them over, maybe not taking the contributions. Get those persons to pay. That's number one. Number two, the contributions are too low. NIS in Jamaica, we pay less than any other country in CARICOM. 2% per year by employee, 2% per year by employer. And that's not your full salary. That's up to $1.5 million. A lot of the workforce earns over $1.5 million. Get that ceiling up. Now they're thinking about 5 million. That's a good number. But it shouldn't just be 5 million. It should be 5 million increasing each year. Get the annual increase into it now so we don't have to be doing this every year. Raise it by inflation. If you think inflation may get crazy, do a cap. Say inflation, maximum 5%. But there should be an annual increase on the contribution. So it's two things. Get everybody into the system. That's number one. Number two, raise those contributions.
When we're talking about a pension system, we need to think about, well, how do you know if your pension system's working or not? What do you look at? Well, there's a couple various criteria that we use. One is coverage. How many people have a pension? Adequacy. Do you give lots of people a very little bit, or do a few people get a lot? It's just, you have to balance the two. Sustainability, we've heard a lot about from Constance. You can give everybody a great big pension, but at some point, the rubber will hit the road, and how affordable is that? And then how efficient, how secure are our pensions? And from a very bird's eye view, we talked a bit about coverage. Obviously, the very small percentage of the formal labour force in the private pensions. But as was mentioned, I think a colleague mentioned on the informal sector is very large here. So there's a lot of people who aren't even in the NIS at all. So the coverage is clearly a challenge, as it is in many countries. The adequacy I'll come on to in a minute. The very interesting, some charts I have looking at adequacy. Sustainability, we've heard very eloquently from Constance on this issue. Efficiency and security, I know my friends from the FSC have been working very hard in terms of the regulation and the oversight in the years, and that's certainly been improving in recent years. So I would say it's a sort of a mixed score of where you are at the minute, and a mixed bunch of problems and questions to answer. I don't pretend I have all the answers. First visit to Jamaica, I'm not even going to pretend I have all the answers for you. But I would suggest you go back to the question. What's the problem you're trying to solve? Is it coverage? Is it adequacy? Is it sustainability? What's the problem you're trying to solve before you think about it? And then really talk to people. All of them, in one go. Magic wand. I'll just wave and it'll talk. And then really talk to people to understand that if you're building the solutions that really fit people's needs. And maybe some of these third ways, maybe there's ways to think about these third way solutions rather than maybe going straight to mandatory. The UK were very clear. They've said we're going to try auto-enrolment. They tried it, by the way, originally. They're called stakeholder pensions. So all employers had to offer a low-cost pension. didn't work. Okay, we're not just going to offer you, we're going to put you in. And that seems to be working. But they've been very clear. If it doesn't work, we might go to mandatory. So they've seen it as a journey. Maybe a third way, maybe a journey is a way to think about here. And as I say, maybe there's a way to think about some sort of central, either funds for particular industries or central administration, something to then build a platform for all different groups, informal sector as well, could feed into. Some of these sort of third way solutions. So I hope I've left you with some thoughts, if not some answers. But thank you very much.
And that's it from us here at the 9th Annual Pension Seminar, brought to you by Prime Asset Management in association with the PSOJ. Until next time, I'm Candy for Business Access TV.